yeah, we're on. Let's talk shadow work, man. Yeah, just you were just saying, repeat what you wanted to cover today, man, or at least one part of it.
Yeah, so I'd like to talk about shadow work. It's a real passion of mine, and also what goes on in the brain in relation to emotional states, and what goes on in the body in relation to emotional states. So yeah, I've studied as a shadow work coach, and also as a biodynamic massage therapist. Biodynamic massage therapy works on the basis that we store stuff in our muscles to do with stresses, anxiety, anger, and we put it in our body, and to be able to, the intention is to find ways of connecting with what's going on in the body, understand the emotion, where that's coming from, and then with the shadow work, help to be able to resolve those emotional issues and move forward and have a body that doesn't feel like it used to.
Doesn't feel like it used to. What do you mean by that?
Oh, okay. So I'll talk about my body.
Yeah. Okay.
So before I did my personal work, my shoulders were like concrete. When I used to hug my dad, it was like hugging a statue, and I probably felt the same. I felt like my back was absolutely solid. My legs. So I do a day job. I'm a telecoms engineer, so I sit at a PC a lot. My legs were cold and kind of numb through most of the day. So yeah, lots of physical sensations. Didn't really. It was just, as far as I was concerned, it was me. That's my body. That's how it feels like. I had no idea that my body could feel different. And in having some massage, biodynamic massage, that was 12 years ago, and doing some shadow work, I started to feel differences in my body. My back started to release those tensions as I was no longer behaving from those stories that kept me in that angry state a lot. I was quite an angry person, frustrated, irritated a lot of the time, and I would squash that anger because the story I told myself as a child was, I can't express my anger because I'll get in trouble. I'll get hit by my father. So I had to contain it, and not only contain that, I had to contain my joy and my spontaneity. Just from certain situations that happened when I was a child, I now know that I shut those down. I had no idea that I'd done that at the time. Yeah, I remember the exact incident where I'd started to shut things down. I was really excited about telling my mum something that my dad had just done. What he'd done was a bit crazy. He'd driven a car around a little communal green in front of some people's houses. I was very excited about it. I told my mum, but my dad had told me, whatever you do, don't tell your mum that I've done this. And so I told her, all excited. And then my dad heard, and he said, why did you tell her that? I told you not to say that. And looking at my mum's face, her look of disapproval, looking at my angry dad's face, I was like, whoa, I can't share. I can't share myself. It's not okay. It's not okay here. It's not okay for me. I didn't know that I'd done that way back in the day. I didn't know that I spent the whole of my teenage years and my 20s repressing stuff, holding it in, shutting it down. Can't show Ashley, can't show the world what Ashley's really like, because it's not okay. And yeah, I took that message into my adulthood, along with a load of other messages around anger, intimacy, joy, connection. And so I now judge that I was a very squashed person. I found shadow work. I first found the Mankind Project and did some work there. And then I went off and did some specific pieces of shadow work. And as I said, I had some biodynamic massage therapy. I started to untangle all of these stories. I started to find the origin of where the story had come from. And then I started to learn tools to be able to change those stories in my head so they no longer confined me. I had very little confidence in my 20s and 30s, and now I'm a very confident person. I'm completely happy to share me with whoever's in front of me, and if they don't like it, or they want to make sarcastic comments, it doesn't it doesn't throw me back anymore. It doesn't confine me anymore. I'm just like, if you don't like Ashley, that's fine. Take it or leave it. But I like Ashley, and I'm happy to share Ashley with everyone else. And I guess that was the bottom line. I didn't like Ashley because Ashley wasn't allowed to come out. I wasn't allowed to express Ashley because it wasn't acceptable for me as a child. So that was quite a long quite a long rant for your question.
Yeah, no, it's cool, man. Yeah, don't apologize here. I mean, it's interesting. So we'll circle back in just a second. And thanks for sharing that. And so just firstly, how obviously your body right now is responding a lot differently and is a lot different. It feels a lot different. So you don't have that tension anymore. You don't have, or certainly as much. You're more flexible, more pliant even. Because I relate to that, you know. I like and I was always like stiff, very, very stiff and kind of wound up as well. And you know, I had a thing in my back a little while ago, a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah.
When they were talking about I had an abscess on my lumbar, I think it is, thoracic, on T3. But what I was thinking of is these guys where, you know, like it could hug another dude or even just stand next to him, put my hand on the shoulder. The guy's like solid. I remember thinking to myself, even as a younger guy, I was like, dude, you just relax a little bit. And they're like, I am relaxed. I'm like, there's no ways that you are normally on a daily basis that rock hard, like that tension that's up there. And he's like, no, I am relaxed. I'm like, it's impossible. How are you that rock hard? But recently, because I had a lot of anger and myself growing up, and I used to store it in my back, and that's where that whole thing with the thoracic came in. And I had to go for electroshock treatment and just a series of hot and cold treatments and all sorts of physio things just to loosen up the muscles. But all of the pain and the knock-on effect of all the different things that was happening with my body at one stage about 4 or 5 years ago, I was just in pain with everything. And I feel like I'm a different person today as well. And I'm just a lot more relaxed, right? There's not as much tension, and that's kind of like opening up to a new world. So why is that then specifically, right? Because you did mention the body. You've been talking about the feelings and the emotions, and we call them feelings because they live in our bodies, right? Yeah. So let's talk about. Tell us a little bit about how that happens. How do you said you got shut down, but for those of us that don't know or haven't heard of this before, how does it work? Why is it the body being affected, you know, by how we feel? What's going on there?
So just a bit of clarity.
Yeah.
No one shut me down. I shut me down, and
right.
that's a thing that I'm really what's the word? I think language is really, really important to be able to take ownership of what I've done to myself, regardless of who was around at the time. You know, I could say it's my mum and my dad's fault. You know, if they hadn't treated me like that, if they just let me be Ashley, then I wouldn't have done it. But that's not taking responsibility, and then I can't fix it. I shut myself down because I judged I couldn't share myself with them and they'd be okay about it. And of course, I wanted intimacy and love from my parents, so I would do whatever it took. So when I feel irritated, and I still do get irritated, it's not like I'm some shaman sitting on a hill, you know, I still have these things going on in my body, and I always will. For me, the key is feeling it, being aware of it, knowing what the story is that's going on in my head, and then responding. So the problem occurs when I feel irritated, and if I sit in that irritation and just allow it and justify it, and oh my God, I can justify it, Brad, to everyone. I'm so angry because you're all making me feel.
I've never heard you do that, Brad.
Haven't you? So I feel irritated. I feel it and I feel it and I feel it, and it can go on for hours. I mean, so some people live in this constant state of irritation, and I'm doing this with my body right now. I'm irritated, and I can feel the muscles that are getting engaged. They're the muscles that go across the scapula there. They call them in the massage world, they call them the gunslingers. It's like, I'm ready to fight you. And they become engaged because we become in that fight mode. We're ready to fight, we're ready to run. They get engaged and they get locked in. If you stay in that unconscious space for hours or days or your whole life, they will be constantly engaged, and they will be sore, and they will tighten, and they will retract, and it basically solidifies the muscle fibers in your body if you constantly keep them tight. That's what they do.
And that's what happened to me, right?
Yeah. I noticed with a number of my clients, if they're desperately trying to hold their position in their family, the muscle here that goes from here down to here, I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but basically it just gets tightened, and you can see it in some people that are quite highly strung, quite high energy, quite thin. If they're the kind of person that is desperate,
it protrudes, is it?
You can see it sticking out here. As you say, it's like it's solid.
There's 3 on each side. They're called the scalenes. They're like tendons.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and I had the same as well. I needed them worked on, and it's so painful. And they're one of them attaches to the rib. The top of the collar. Two top ribs. I had my ribs popped out because they were so tense that they just kind of retracted everything. Yeah, and to get them worked on is so sore, but the relief is absolutely worth it. Yeah. So the interrupt, but yeah.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
So, and on that note, when I got my first massage, very gently touching different parts of my body, my arms, my legs, my shoulders, and I'm like, ow, that really hurts. And my belief was, there's just some things that hurt in the body, and that's just the way it is. And they're like, no, you need to massage that to work it out, and then it will release, the pain will go away. And it does, it really does. And so the science behind that, as I said, the muscle fibers get solidified, and they have to be broken down. And if you're not going to break them down by things like yoga and stretching and really moving your body just so that you can get all those, then having a massage on those will break it down, and it will fix itself. But of course, there's no point in going to a massage therapist every couple of weeks to reset your body, because the reason why your body is doing that is because the story that's driving it. And we all have, as I said, we all have these stories that we created from when we were young, or maybe in our adulthood. But yeah, a lot of the stories come from when people are young and they're wanting to fit in to their environment, and they'll do whatever it takes to be able to do that.
Yeah, man. It's like it's sort of just not being aware of it at all, living in that unconscious sort of space and state, which is fair enough. I guess that's where I grew up and lived. It's like a piano wire, right? It's just like my whole body, or the whole body, because of what we're feeling, we don't know how to, or I didn't, and en masse, if anyone's suffering from this, I imagine it's the same sort of thing. We just don't know how to express that in a good way. Like you say, you shut yourself down. I shut myself down. It was just anger, and it was just constant, like you say, fight, and when I was threatened, or when I wanted, like, my back used to just kind of swell up. And it's year after year after year. You go 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, some people go 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, carrying just this kind of constant tension. It's no wonder that we end up limping and hobbling and in pain all the time.
Back problems, spinal problems.
Yeah, and it's because we don't know how to channel what we're feeling, right? In a good way.
Yeah,
and that's why they say it's a symptom of the emotion.
Totally. Yeah. If you watch a cat, I mean, the cat's a great example. They have a fright, or they have an angry situation. Within some seconds afterwards, they literally just do this with their body. They shake the whole thing. They shake it. It's gone. It's done. It's left their body. Most human beings don't do that. They've had that tense situation where they feel irritated, and then they relax enough to just be able to go to sleep. But they haven't worked that muscle. It's still there. They wake up the next morning irritated again, and it kind of compounds. There's another irritation. All of a sudden, they're like, oh, really so irritated. It's because they've got a whole bag of irritation stories that they haven't let go.
Yeah. And it seems to center a lot around the shoulders and the neck and that sort of thing, and that affects the back and things like that. Any other parts of the body that can carry the weight of not releasing emotions appropriately?
So that's specifically to do with the the fight, because it's the fight position, that where the, you know, the back and the shoulders all get triggered into, and the neck as well, especially if like you've heard the phrase. I mean, this was a great teaching in my massage. All these phrases that we've learned over the years about our bodies, they have truth in them. Like, I feel like I'm getting it in the back of the neck. People go a bit like that, you know, keep your head down because you're going to get caught, you know. You know this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people that are proud of themselves and they're confident and they're full of joy, they're like this. If they feel like they're run down, they're, you know, and depressed, they're like this. And the body, you know, the body just follows where it's being told to go from the story that's going on.
The other side of that I see is that a lot of people I see at the gym that I go to, and the stuff that I do, and you know, the people are in pain, and it is well from overactivity and all that sort of thing as well. But as you say, from the constant carrying of the emotion and not releasing it, then I see a lot of people with a massive resistance to getting any treatment. Yeah, do you get that as well? I mean, you obviously, if people come to you, they're open to it because they want the massage, but you know, the amount of times I've heard people consistently talking about some sort of niggle or pain or injury they have. And every time I or somebody else mentions an option like a physio or a massage therapist or something, they just kind of wave it off, and it's not really, no, that's fine, I'll get better by myself. Okay, well then stop complaining.
Yeah, so I mean, so my first thought is, you know, what's the stories driving that response? You know, I can't be intimate, you know, with a massage therapist. I'm not that guy. I can't just let someone touch my body, or it's all airy fairy and it's not going to work because I've got no belief in it working. Yeah, or maybe I like to complain. I'm a complainer, so I'll just shut the fuck up and just keep on doing what I'm doing, and then I can carry on moaning about it.
Yeah, I don't actually want a solution. I want to keep living in the problem.
Yeah. There's a great book. I think it's called The Games People Play, written back in the '60s, and one of the games that's written in there is Ain't It Awful? And it's a game that the people, especially in the UK, they play quite a lot. They enjoy moaning about something. They don't want a solution. They just want to have a whole conversation about moaning. Like, you know, I get to the train platform, and a guy standing next to me says to me, "God, and these trains awful. They're never on time." And my response was, "I actually love getting on the train because then I don't have to drive all this way. It's actually quite chilled." But so he walked away. He looked grumpy because I didn't respond, and he didn't get a complaining conversation out of me.
Yeah, I get that. There is a lot of negativity. I mean, it's all around the world as well, but it seems to be very prevalent here. And one of the things I get is I'll just be talking to somebody, and they'll just go, "Oh, what a nightmare."
Yeah.
And then I'm like, really? No, it isn't. And thank you, but you can have that back. Like, you know what I mean? Like, don't give me that. Like, I didn't ask for that. I'm just talking to you. But everything's a nightmare. And it's even, I don't use it, but it's used so often that it's even shortened. You know, people don't call it a nightmare anymore. They just say, "Oh, what a mare."
Yeah.
But it means the same thing. They're just finding ways to fit it more frequently into a sentence. And that comes back down to the language thing as well, right? That you were talking about earlier. So important. So important. And no, things are not awful. Things are not. In fact, they are awesome. They are brilliant. And they're dreams. You know, every day that I can walk around is a dream. You know what I mean?
Well, so this touches on something that I've been doing a lot of research on recently, because someone close to me has recently been suffering from anxiety and depression. So I've worked with people with anxiety and depression, but you know, this was someone close to me, so I thought I'd do a bit of extra research on it. And what you just said there is like the absolute key to fixing anxiety and depression. It's that in the moment thinking, this is exciting. It's a new day. What goals am I going to set myself? What goals am I going to achieve? What's my next adventure? You know, should I go running to somewhere new? Should I, you know, get on a kayak and go down a river? Should I go to the sea? All of that stuff. It's all, you know, positive mental attitude, and it literally changes the chemistry in our bodies. It has a massive release of dopamine, huge release of dopamine when we do something that excites us, or where we feel adventurous, or where we experience some pain and then get the pleasure after it. So a great example is cold baths. I went through a process of 6 months of jumping in cold water, cold baths, cold showers whenever I could. I felt like I was on top of the world. Understand why. It was just like, well, I'm just doing this cold bath thing. Why is this? But the science behind it is it literally dumps tons of dopamine into your system once you get through that process. So yeah, it all seems so simple, doesn't it? You know, to be able to have a great life, you have to set goals, you have to be positive, you have to do the exercise, you have to do the meditation, you have to be in your body, letting go of all these stories that are whirring around in your head. But it's really difficult to get to. It is. I can't just say that to a person. You know, I can't just say that to my family member and they go, oh yeah, okay, I'll just do that and I'll fix it. Because there's all these stories running in the background that have so much energy and power. They stop people from being the person they want to be, and that's where the shadow work comes in.
Yeah, and it's reinforced socially, it's reinforced culturally, it's reinforced in the families, and it's just perpetrated. It just cycles itself. And it is hard to break out. And I'm glad you said that, because it can sound so easy, and there's a lot of this stuff out there. Well, I've got 10 steps to emotional freedom, or 10 steps to get you to feel better. And I found that all of these things that I have done, or I do now, do make me feel better, and they create a better way of life for me. It doesn't mean I don't have my downs. I mean, I certainly do all the time. I've got to be very, very vigilant, not hyper vigilant, but I need to be aware of it. And of course, getting better over time. And like you say, my body's a lot more relaxed as well than it used to be. And, it talks about in the Tao Te Ching, which is the Taoism philosophy thing. It says that, if you're in harmony with the world around you, somebody who is in harmony and is kind of stress-free, or has managed to work on their emotions, or is in a positive state, is less likely to get injured. Is less likely to have sort of like foul things happen to them. Do you know what I mean? Because we attract as well what we put out, and this is all a kind of a network of things, metaphysical, esoteric things that seem to work, but it's a hard concept to grasp if I'm stuck in something. If I've really been stuck there, and what is it that I need to do? I mean, I've had my experiences; they were painful. Does everybody have to have a painful experience in order to get to a place where they understand that, actually what I have around me is worth living for? Things that happen are exciting. They're not a problem. You know what I mean? To start to change the way I see that.
Yeah.
What's the answer? And you've mentioned shadow work, and it's maybe a good time to see how that, or to talk about how that complements the biodynamic massage in terms of helping. What happened? How was it for you? How did you get around to eventually releasing all of the stuff that you were storing, in your body? And how did you sort of effectively rid yourself of that, if you like, and create this new way of life?
So I'll touch first on something you said about pain. So my judgment of my personal work is it was the most difficult and challenging thing I've ever had to do in my life. It was the most scary. And that sounds, if you were just looking in the window at what I was doing, I was just kind of reenacting a dynamic that had happened in my childhood. I had to take on the voice of my father that would shout at the top of his voice to get me to behave exactly how he wanted me to behave, and to embody that, and then to choose to fight that message out of my head. It took everything I had, absolutely everything I had. And that's essential, because if you don't face the fear of change, of vulnerability, then you won't be able to change yourself. So yeah, I talk about my anger pieces of work. I was very angry with my father. I was angry because of the way that he treated me. I was angry at my mother because of her look of disapproval she gave me. It tore me in two, Brad. you know, what I wanted as a young boy was to be loved by my mum. And if I got something wrong, she looked at me like I was worthless, like I was the most irritating being on the planet. And it destroyed me over and over and over again. And the story that I took on, of course, was I'm bad, I'm wrong, I always mess up, I'm not lovable, I can't share myself. All these little stories that I took on about myself. And as I said earlier, I had no idea I was doing this, and everybody I judge doesn't know that they're taking on these stories and slowly changing their character and their behavior to try and fit in and to try and be loved and accepted. So a little work on anger, some shadow work. What that looked like was exploring the story where this part of my anger had come from, this irritation, this rage, whatever it was, being clear on exactly where that story had come from and the messages that I took on as a child, and then choosing that I'm going to change that story because it's not live anymore. You know, the message I took on when I was 5 years old, when I broke that wall, my mum, you know, scowled at me and shouted at me. That's not happening anymore. But I was still living my life from that story, still living my life from the story of my father hitting me. You know, oh, I'm under threat right now. You know, like if someone was to get angry in front of me in my 30s, I would feel like I was being attacked, like I was going to be killed. That's not happening anymore. That's not the reality of what's happening right now. And so I can choose to let that story go. And so the way that shadow work works is it works heavily with archetypes. So archetypes, there was 12 archetypes originally written by Carl Jung, and then a couple of guys in America called Gillette and Moore wrote a book called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, and they kind of separated them into 4 archetypes that then had an inflated and a deflated part of it. So I'll just run through them quickly, and then people maybe be able to associate with them, because we all have these archetypes. I mean, it wasn't just Carl Jung that created them. You know, mythic stories from hundreds, thousands of years ago all had these archetypes in them. So the 4 archetypes are the warrior, the lover, the magician, and the sovereign, or can be king, queen. So the lover is all about connection, intimacy, being playful, being romantic, being spontaneous. If there's an inflation or a deflation in that, then people might want to overexpress themselves to be able to feel safe. They may squash their intimacy because they can't share themselves, because then they won't be accepted. They might squash their joy, you know, their playfulness, for fear of what someone might say, and their spontaneity and being romantic. You know, if I do a romantic gesture and the person, you know, pushes it back in my face, I'll feel destroyed. You know, all these stories, stopping them from feeling balanced in their lover. The warrior is about action, about setting boundaries, about being clear with people about what you want and what you don't want, what's okay for you and not okay for you. If someone has an inflated warrior, they might be angry, irritated a lot of the time. Things may just be absolutely black and white. You know, it's my rules or it's the highway. You know, do it how I say it, or you're out. Which is the story I got from my father. If they have a very deflated warrior, they might just be being walked all over. You know, I've got no boundaries. You can treat me however you like. I won't complain. Become a doormat. The magician is all about being analytical, thought processes. So someone that's got an inflated magician, that would look like, you know, they're up in their head all the time. They're trying to second guess the next thing. They're trying to plan the next conversation. They're analysing stuff that happened last week, last year, months, years ago, constantly going round in their head. If they're going round in their head, then they're they'll have a deflated lover part because they won't be in their body. So they all kind of interact and work with each other. Deflated magician doesn't really want to think about anything, doesn't want to process anything, doesn't want to analyze anything, just wants to be. And then finally, the sovereign or the king or the queen is about looking after those three archetypes, looking after Ashley as a whole, setting goals for myself, planning for the future, being supportive to myself and to the people around me, being an inspiration to people, being a rock in a storm, being able to, no matter what. So what I notice is that if the other three archetypes aren't in balance, the lover, the warrior, the magician, then the king won't be in balance either. And so if someone needs to work on their sovereign, they probably need to work on the others as well. So yeah, when I first started doing this work, I was like, yeah, it's my warrior. It's my warrior that's out of whack. I've got to do some anger work to be able to feel like I can set my boundaries, be in my boundaries, but at the same time not do it in an inflated way where I attack people and squash people. And as I got into that work, then I realized, my lover is all over the place. I have addictions just to be able to make myself feel okay. I can't really share myself. I can't be intimate. Certainly couldn't be very playful in my adult life. Yeah, it was just why would you do that? Why would you just go and jump in that pool being spontaneous? Why would you, just start dancing in the rain? That's not me. And now it is. And now it just lights my heart up. So yeah, shadow work is all about looking at those four archetypes, where the balance and imbalance is, and then trying to find out where those stories have come from that have pushed me into that imbalance, and to rectify those stories. And it always works on the deflated. If someone's got an inflated sovereign, so they believe they're always right, they behave like God, untouchable, I'm always right, everybody else is always wrong. And quite often it goes inflated sovereign and inflated warrior. If someone's like that, there's no point in trying to work on that part, because you're not going to be able to bring them back down to balance. You've got to find the balance in the magician and the lover to be able to get them properly in their body, and being able to be intimate and vulnerable and accepting themselves and accepting everybody else, and then you'll get the natural balance in the sovereign and the warrior too. So yeah, I find it absolutely fascinating. It works on someone's it works with someone's psyche. So what I will do is I will find out the story that's going on for them in the moment, why they came to me, what emotional issue are they coming with, and then how that relates back to the stories that they've told themselves as a child and the reasons why they've got a deflation or an inflation in each of those archetypes, and then doing a piece of work around that to be able to get that balance back.
Great, man. Very, very, very clear and detailed description. I mean, there are more, as you said, right? But those are the sort of four main adult archetypes, as they're referred to.
Yes.
And you mentioned the queen, because the others are all masculine. The lover is also feminine, and then in the feminine, the magician is called something else, right? Referred to as is it the crone?
Yes, it is. Yeah. So in shadow work, we just work on those four archetypes, whereas other modalities have other archetypes that they work on. Yeah.
And of course,
but I believe that everything can be brought back to those four.
Those four, yeah. And then the feminine is the warrioress. And I always find that the little boy or the little girl certainly is always an important one as well.
Yeah.
In this sort of setup. So yeah, thanks for that. So you're working on these, it allows you to release the anger, it allows you to release the emotion, it allows you to find the balance, right? And then we start being able to process our emotions differently. What's the result? Speak to us about the results of shadow work therapy.
Okay, so when I did some work on my anger, I did a number of pieces over a number of years, and every time I felt different afterwards for the days, weeks afterwards. I was like, wow, there's movement here in my shoulders that's not been there before, and they feel soft and supple. And then an incident that would happen that would normally make me feel really irritated or angry, and I kind of observe the incident and observe myself and think, you didn't just start shouting, you didn't just start shaking like you wanted to hit, like, you know, my body starts to respond differently after I've done that piece of work. And I hear this time and time again from all of my clients. I always check in with them afterwards, and the majority of them, they say, you know, wow, I'm different. Like, I'm actually completely different. And this is what intrigued me about the work. When I first saw it. So when I first saw it, it was in MKP. It's a version of shadow work that is done in MKP, and you know, a group of like, I think it was like 12 guys doing the work, and there was also staff men there. I was looking at these guys doing their piece of work and thinking, you look different. Like, after that piece of work, I think this has actually worked, and I was blown away. Like, what if you could just do a piece of work for, you know, 20 minutes or an hour or hour and a half, whatever it is, and then you can respond differently, you can feel different. It just blew me away. I thought, I've got to learn this. I'm so intrigued. They look like magicians, these guys that are running these processes. I'm like, you know what you know, but it seems like whatever emotional issue someone comes up with, they're like, here's a piece of work, 20 minutes, half an hour. The guy's different. Like, what? That's insane. But the MKP weekend is set up in such a way so that when they get to do their piece of work there, you know, they've gone through so many processes that they're just primed to do that piece of work. In shadow work, of course, you haven't had that amount of time beforehand, and so the shadow work piece of work will often take a bit longer, and often it can evolve into different pieces of work. So, you know, someone might start doing an anger piece of work, but straight after that, I see it's really important to do a piece of lover and connection piece of work. Quite often, what anger covers is sadness or fear. And so, you know, you can bash the hell out of something all you like, but if you don't actually address the emotion that's underneath, then you'll be bashing the hell out of something for years to come. It's about really addressing that underlying story that right now, I feel unsafe right now. I feel really sad right now, and to be able to do a lover piece of work in shadow work around that really changes people. Yeah, and another example, I did a piece of work recently with someone. They wanted to work on the weight issues, and when I asked them to embody their inner critic, they really didn't want to. They didn't want to show me what that looked like, and now I know why, because it was vile. The things that this guy was saying to himself in his head were awful. It just sends chills down me, Brad. Just like, wow, you've got that in your ear all day. That's awful. And he did an anger piece of work, and he got right to the bottom of his anger. So angry. And in the end, he was shouting, I am not going to listen to you anymore. Makes me cry, Brad. Because I've had conversations with this guy in the weeks after his session. He's not listening to that voice anymore. He's not binging the food anymore. He's taken back the power. That's insane.
Yeah, and it's just crazy how like we can just give in and just listen to that voice without even realizing it's happening, right? It's kind of, it's, you know, certainly in my experience, I would say to people, and it was said to me, you know, would you ever treat anybody as badly as you treat yourself? I was like, no, of course I wouldn't. I would never say the things to other people that I tell myself about myself, or at least that I used to, right? Yeah, and it's no wonder that life is tough. It's no wonder that life is hard and that it's a slog and that things don't, it feels like there's no hope, because you're constantly on the end of this voice telling you you're a piece of shit in however many formats that shows up.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing, and having experienced it myself, as well, it's, when the work happens, and the work, we refer to the work as a sort of deep emotional process work or shadow work, and then doing personal work is referred to as the work, right? When I've done a piece, and I was very resistant to everything. When I was extremely resistant to everything most of my life, and all of this sort of stuff that we're talking about now was just airy fairy bullshit, poppycock. Didn't want to fucking know about it. Keep it away from me. Not interested. You know what I mean? Go smoke you or whatever. Take your mushrooms. Fuck off. Leave me alone. And there was no anger there at all, right? I'll start with another little story quickly though. It was about 10 years ago now, 9 or 10 years ago, when I first went into recovery, and I went to the 12-step meetings, and one of the meetings was about fear. And then, we all had to, there was a podium, and we all had to take turns and go, if you wanted to go up and speak. And I think at this particular meeting, it was kind of like a creeping wall of death. Like, you had to go. So it was coming around. And then I got up and I was talking. I was like, I'm not scared. I'm not afraid of anything. I'm angry. That's what I said. I'm angry, but I'm not scared of anything. Then after the meeting, this guy was there from New York, and he came up to me. He said, Brad, you know that the anger hides the fear, right? And I never got more annoyed with anybody in my life. I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. Leave me alone. Yeah. But it's true, and it's actually, after understanding the work and studying and working with people and doing the stuff, it becomes quite evident that it's really quite basic. It's like a mechanic on a car, or whatever, a surgeon. Once you learn and you know where to cut and where to stitch and what to do, or which bolts to loosen, what to grease and what not to grease, eventually it's understood.
Yes.
However, on the other side of it, it's very, very complicated, and it certainly was for me. And all of these things that I felt like I was so angry, I was holding on to stuff, resentful all the time, hated myself, just felt like there was never going to be any hope for me, and that no matter what I did, it was useless. I couldn't let this go. I was just like, I was stuck. This was my lot in life. And then I go and I do this work, and I do pieces of this work, and I can't explain it. And then afterwards, I'll go searching for the trigger. I'll go searching for the switch. Like, surely I can turn back on the anger and the resentment. But it's really quite interesting how it works, and I can't even find the word to describe it. But it's because it's so pleasant. It's so, it just dissipates. Yeah. In my experience, there isn't, there's a big moment, and then over the course of the next couple of weeks, I might go, I haven't actually responded like that for a while. Like, that used to annoy the hell out of me, and it doesn't matter anymore. Yes. And it's after maybe a really hard piece of work at the time that takes some courage and some effort, and some bravery, it just sort of almost it just disappears into the distance, into the past. Yes. Right? Yes. And it's quite subtle that way.
Yeah. I mean, I never used to be able to be intimate with someone, and for me that means being able to completely share me in my most vulnerable moments. I'm not talking about sexual intimacy, just connection intimacy. I could not do it. I could not really let anybody see me and experience me. And after I'd done some shadow work, I gave myself enough permission to share myself, and it felt scary, but I had the confidence and the power to be able to overcome that voice of, you shouldn't share, Ashley, that's not safe, to, this feels scary because I don't know what's happening right now, but I know I want this, I know I need this. And so yeah, over time, sharing myself more and more, it just doesn't feel scary anymore. Not at all. It's just gone.
Yeah, I in that regard, I'm much better than I was as well. Like, no one got anywhere close to me, right? Like, and I didn't get close to anyone. And it was just so difficult. I'd clam up. I'd just as soon lose a friendship than tell somebody how I was feeling. Yes, like, totally. Or like lose a relationship. In my current relationship, much better. I'm a different person completely. However, there are still times, the more of my feelings are growing, I still, there's some stuff where I say, oh, that's uncomfortable. And I can still sense a little bit of resistance. But that's the difference. These days, I can sense the resistance. It comes around in a week or two, and then we have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
And it's like, actually, yeah, that's the truth. That's the truth, is I was still afraid in that moment. And okay, I take your point. I was a bit more closed off there than, even though I thought I was like Buddha, you know what I mean? And Cupid combined. Like, to me, it felt that way. Obviously, you know, I was still a little bit shut down on that piece at that moment.
Yeah.
But the difference is I can come back to that.
Yeah.
You know, and it doesn't destroy relationships for me anymore. And it doesn't, you know, resentments. I could get a resentment from a statue, man. You know what I mean? Walk past a statue, what the fuck are you looking at? And hold on to it. And every time I saw that statue, I just wanted to break it down. None of that anymore. None of that. Yeah. No. It's you know, it's one of those things where that's, I think the best way to describe it is how we've done it.
Right.
You know, it's an experiential thing, but it just really disappears.
Yeah.
And because it disappears, it gives space for something else. And that's, you know, a product of, maybe there's other modalities of work that have the same impact eventually.
Oh, sure.
Shadow work, certainly one of the most effective ones I've ever come across.
Yeah. 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 For me, it's about bringing the unconscious into the conscious, you know, where before someone does any personal work, they will be behaving in a very unconscious way. And all of these stories will be driving their thoughts, feelings, behaviors. As someone starts to do some shadow work, they start to learn to be able to watch themselves doing that. Oh, I've dropped into that anger or that irritation again. Is that what I want? You know, for me, my life direction, like my mission, is to be full of joy and connection. If I'm feeling irritated, where's the joy? And in that moment, I can say, as I was saying earlier, but I'm so irritated because you've done blah, blah. And I sit there feeling like that and thinking like that, and then thinking, where's the joy? Where really seeing these people, you know, my kids, you know, am I seeing the beauty in this moment of my kid in whatever they're in, you know, if they're in irritation or anger, you know, that's a beautiful thing. I can help them through that. I can support them through that. Or I can just be irritated and shout at them, and then we shout at each other, and then it just explodes. It's like, yeah, where's the joy? Where's the connection? Where's the beauty in this moment? And
it's hidden in fear.
Yeah, yeah. And for me, it's really about having that amount of awareness and consciousness that when these moments happen, I can catch myself earlier and earlier and earlier, to the point where, you know, I'll have the feeling come up of the irritation. I'll feel it literally getting into my shoulders. I'm like, oh, there it is. Take a breath, let it go. This isn't going to make you happy for the rest of the day. And now I can let it go.
Yeah. And that's great. And to be clear, though, that takes work.
Oh, serious amounts of work and dedication to it.
Yeah. To be clear, it takes work. And that's the scary part, right?
Yeah.
And for somebody out there who's listening that doesn't know, I'd say, you know, the thing is just make that first call, man, make that first move and just start the process. And it is tough. You know, there was a point in my life where, if I'm completely honest, well, I'm always completely honest, as much as I can be. There was a point where I was sick and tired. I got sick and tired of taking myself so seriously. All this work all the time and beating myself up, and I fucked my life up, and the drugs and the relationships, and basically, you know, anybody that had come into contact with me at a certain point in time, whether it was just a hello or a drink in the pub or something like that, or a bar or whatever, I probably owed them an apology. You know what I mean? Like, that was the person I was, or that's what came out of me, you know, because of what I was holding on to, what I didn't know how to express. So I just, and it felt like for a while I was just constantly beating myself, trying to find the ways to get better. But I'm glad I did it.
Yeah.
Now I'm glad I did it.
Yes.
I wouldn't change it for the world. And in retrospect, it was 5 or 6 year period before it really started to shift and things started to make sense. I started to see little progressions all the way, of course.
Yeah.
But there was a 5 or 6 year period where it was just felt quite dark and hard. And it gets in the way of relationships, intimate and friendships. For me, it got in the way of finance, abundance, like creating stuff in my life. It's got in the way of joy and all of those things. And it can still creep in every now and again. And Brene Brown has a term for it, and I can't remember it now. I was listening to it this morning. But for me, it's effectively like, eventually we get to a point where we learn that we can recognize that I'm hooked by this emotion. Like right now, I'm hooked by this emotion. And it can show up in like, I feel dizzy. Like, actually, how did I end up here? What's going on? You know what I mean? Like, or just, I'm not okay right now. I'm just going to get back to you in a little bit, sort of thing. And that's the awareness that comes with it, because it doesn't stop it from happening. Right?
No.
But progressively, the more work that gets done on a consistent basis, the easier it becomes. And why wouldn't I want to do that? Just make it a part of my life, the same way I go to gym for an hour a day.
Yeah. Well, I've thought about people, why don't you just, this stuff is out there. You're obviously being affected by the emotional stuff that's happening because you talk about it. You talk about it to me and to other people. I'm irritated because dad always behaves like that. Whatever the story is, and I see that there's a level of comfort in the status quo for everybody.
Absolutely.
And so what I have noticed is that some people, when they start to do personal work, there'll be other people in their worlds, partners, kids, friends. They won't actually want them to change because that's uncomfortable. And human beings don't actually like change. No. It can be exciting for some people if they embrace it, but for most human beings, don't want change. They want everything to stay the same.
Absolutely.
And so, as you said, it can put strain on people's relationships. If a person is behaving in a very certain way in a marriage, and all of a sudden they do some personal work, it's like they've literally changed as a person. Hopefully, they've changed to be a better, lovelier person, but they might not really gel with their partner anymore.
The other person is afraid that they are changing so much, they're now be on their own, and this person's going to leave them, right?
Yeah.
And that can serve to keep people down as well. It's not done on purpose, but families can keep us small.
Yes.
Because I don't want to succeed too much, because when I succeed too much, I can see that they feel bad. Oh shit, I don't want them to feel bad. So I'm just gonna stay down here where it's comfortable. It's really challenging. And it brings up a whole host of other things. That the hurdles to, but at the same time, wouldn't change it for the world.
No, definitely.
My world is much more colorful now, much more vibrant, so much more possibility and hope than there ever has been.
Yeah. I mean, the way I experience life now, even if I died tomorrow, I would rather have had the life that I've had than have 10 lives of how I was in my 20s and 30s. It's life is a completely different experience for me, and everybody else experiences me differently as well.
That's probably the most important piece, right?
Yeah. I can see that I have on other people by the way that I communicate with them and behave around them, and it's just so much more nourishing and connecting than it ever was before I did any work.
Great, man. Thank you. So if there's one piece, just one thing you wanted to say to leave here today, if someone's listening to this and they want to hear something, what would you say?
If you can see something, anything that's not working for you on an emotional level in your life, I really encourage you to take that leap and to do something about it, get some support and find a way to change that dynamic. Because it may be the hardest thing you've ever had to face in your life, because it will push your comfort zone to a place where you've probably never been. And yet the reward on the other side is you can actually enjoy your life fully in the way that you want to, and you can be the person that you always wanted to be without all of those stories holding you back.
Great. Thank you, man. Cool. We'll do this again soon, right?
Yeah. Had a lovely chat. Thank you very much.